Hello everybody, this is Jennifer Parks here. Today I'm going to be making some soaps and I wanted to go ahead and start the prep work already. So I have my 2 boiling pots of water. I'm going to be making, these are both cocoa soap base and they have already been obviously cut up, but it's about a pound, half a pound per pot because I want it to melt pretty quickly. Um, to go over some of the basics, this is a double boiler situation, right? So you've got your inner pot. You don't have to have these particular inserts. You can use other pots, like a smaller one or a dish that's microwave safe, a bowl of some sort, inside a bigger pot with boiling water. Um, Sorry, my pot is boiling a little bit more than I want it to right now, so I'm trying to adjust the temperature and make sure that water does not get inside the double boiler, because if it does, it will ruin the soap base and I'll have to start all over. So, um, right. So I'm going to monitor these, make sure that they melt down and they don't boil. You do not want the soap base to actually boil. If it does, once again, you've ruined your soap base and you need to start all over. With this is a cocoa butter soap base, so it's going to be a little bit more firm um, than your standard Shea butter soap base. That's going to be a little bit more smooth. This tends to break up because it is a USDA certified organic soap base. I have got it from Earthwise Aromatics, and it is a really good soap base, and it's actually really healthy for your skin, as I've stated numerous times in some of my other videos. Um, but it's going to last a bit longer than the Shea because the Shea is a softer base. And it is going to nourish the skin and keep it moist and make sure that you stay healthy. Again, I never use additives that are unnecessary for my soap bases or any of the other products that I use, and as a result, it's got a lot of positive hits for people who have skin issues like acne, psoriasis, eczema, etc. Um, this right here, I'm making Black Sea, I believe. Yeah, Black Sea and Moonlight Musk. Usually I don't like to use fragrances in my products, but this was a special request. And of course, I gave them a disclaimer and everything like that. Um, I have not been able to find an essential oil that is comparative to uh, that particular, either particular scent. But nonetheless, it is a very, very minimal amount of fragrance that I'll put in these, just like the essential oils that I use. I do not like using very much of them, and I also will put vitamin E in there and other nourishing um, properties so that it sort of complements the skin just as I do for my ordinary lotions and soaps, etc. Sorry, it's a windy day, so these are kind of boiling a lot more than I want them to. Um, so I gotta keep a close eye on that. Small pots always seem to be a concern, especially if you use a large insert like this one is. I have small inserts, but I've divided my inserts based on wax, things with wax in it versus things without wax, beeswax namely. The lotions that I use, they have beeswax. The lip balms that I make, they also have a little bit of beeswax. So I try and differentiate and keep the inserts separate so that there's no cross-contamination. Not that it would be unhealthy to use something with beeswax remnants in it to make the soaps, but I just like to keep the products as pure as possible for my actual recipes. I do have different recipes here. I don't actually have the soap recipe, but I always like to stay true to whatever it is that I'm making. So I have lip balm, bath salts, sugar scrub recipe, and body butter. What I've done over the course of time is I've taken a look at different recipes, and I've also made sure that I stick to a recipe that is kind of not copied by any extent. I've adjusted it after trying different recipes. I've adjusted it so that it is how I like it. So for example, if I need to reduce the amount of oil so the products are not too oily, I'll make sure to do that. And then carry on. But for the soaps in particular, the recipe has kind of stayed the same. Obviously, I will adjust how much soap base I use and how much vitamin E I use and how much fragrance I use based upon how the size of the product and how much I'm making. So today for this, I'm actually making large bars of soap, and in a bit I will be making small bars of soap with a Shea base. So for the large bars, obviously I'll be adding a little bit more fragrance, but again, you don't need much at all. I've already done my prep work for everything, so basically this is just a waiting game. I don't really have much more to tell you as of right now, so I'm going to keep that on the pot and we will continue to talk about different things. While that's going. Something that I use inside soaps on occasion is different flowers. I've got a lemon slice here. I also have lavender buds, rose petals, right, and chrysanthemums. I have a number of other ones, but basically a lot of people ask me why the flowers and why the additives. These have all been they are certified just dried organic flowers. There's no additives in those as well. And basically the reason why I use them is because they act as an exfoliating property to the skin when you're actually using the soap. And that is good because it will eliminate some of the dead skin that is a natural thing that the body sheds. And then as a secondary kind of component, what will happen is the vitamin E and the soap and everything like that will nourish the skin upon the completion of getting the dead skin off. Of course, I make soaps that don't have additives in them, which is fine too. it's still just as good. I mean, obviously, if you have really dry skin, sometimes it's a great idea to go ahead and and to use the exfoliating, the extra exfoliating. I mean, you can factors. You can get something that will exfoliate, like a loofah or whatnot from the store. That works too. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your soap. Um, but I do have a number of flowers and such that I can put in there as options, and that's of course all posted on the Facebook page. You can find us, we are located at South of Valhalla Crafts on Facebook. We also have our YouTube site, same thing, and then we also have our website, which is www.ladyparks66.wix site. That's wixsite.com/SOV crafts. So as those get a little bit boiled down, what I want to do is add in some vitamin E. So I've got my vitamin E. I got my knife. And since this is a large batch, I'm using both pots for the same batch. So since it's a large batch, I'll put three capsules in each batch. Again, this is not enough oil that it will make the actual soap oily, but it will be beneficial to the overall product, and it kind of amplifies the health factor to it. And usually for small batches of soap, depending upon how much I make, right, whether or not I use a full pound or half a pound, for a pound I usually use 3 caps. But in this case, since they're large bars, I will use more than that, obviously, because this is a pound total. So half a pound in each pot, and I'm putting 3 caps in there. Vitamin E, again, is fantastic for scars. It'll help heal scars. I actually have a surgical scar on my neck, and I've noticed a tremendous difference, as had my neurosurgeon. We both have been very impressed with the way the vitamin E and the soap products and the lotion products that I use, that I make, has really helped heal the scar tremendously. Vitamin E will also eliminate sort of the red spots or the blemishes that you may have on your skin. It'll help heal it, and it'll also help protect it from sun damage, your skin from sun damage in the future. So it is very useful, and it also, because it's kind of an oily base to it, it will help nourish and moisturize the skin, which is complementary to the rest of the soap and the lotions and everything else that I use it for. I've also started to make lip balms, but I haven't put vitamin E in them because they are usually so packed with different oils and beneficial components already that there really is enough in there. For these soaps and anything that I make, they actually do not clog your pores. So for the lotions in particular, I'll use avocado oil, olive oil, grapeseed oil, and the shea butter and the cocoa butter, the stuff that's actually pure. And the reason why I do that is because if it is truly pure, it will not clog your pores. So you can use it on your face, you can use it on your back, your arms, any area that you would normally get blemishes, acne, all of that. I've had a lot of positive feedback about these soaps and about these products and how unique they are, because they really do not whatsoever sort of complicate pre-existing conditions, and they are just so different in comparison to supermarket products that have a ton of alcohols in it and whatnot. And you can look at the ingredients on the supermarket products, and you can see that alcohols are commonly used as the first, second ingredient in there. And the benefits between doing the home thing is that you don't get that whatsoever. The main ingredient in this is an organic soap base. So right now, I'm just sort of waiting for the second pot back here to melt. This one's melting good, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the coloring in there, because I'm going to use some coloring for this. And I'm actually going to do a combination, right? So I've got my blue and my black. These particular coloring, I don't remember the company that I use, but they are food safe. And it's actually gluten-free, for whatever that's worth. And since I'm doing sort of a dark kind of, let's see, this is going to be Black Sea, so I want to do a darker kind of blue to sort of go with the name. So I'm going to do a couple of drops of each. You really don't need much. And I'm going to stir it in, and hopefully it's going to kind of, there it is, it's going to kind of darken up and turn into a sea kind of look. There. Right. The fragrance will kind of adjust. Right now, the fragrance kind of got stuck to that, so I'll always have a second spoon. That way I'm using all of the coloring in there. That's more like it. And sometimes I'll change up the way it looks. I'll do little swirl patterns on the inside of the molds that I use, instead of putting the coloring in the actual pot itself. I will go ahead and wait until I actually put the soap base in the mold before I add the coloring. And what happens with that is you can get kind of a swirl pattern. It looks really, really cool, actually. I like it, but I like to play around with stuff like that. Right. So here I have my little dropper. I'm going to take this off the heat. Put about 4 drops in there. Stir it up. All right, and then pour it into this mold that I have. By the time I get done with this, the other pot will be ready, and I can go ahead and just add it in. Add it in on top of that, and then I'll stir it a little to make sure that everything is melted together. And there are no issues. So I have my little dropper. I'm only going to add 3 drops to that one. And do the same ratio. Well, maybe I'll do it a little bit darker so I can get kind of a swirl pattern to show you guys. Mixture between light and dark. And you just stir it up. Yeah. See it? Sort of get a crazy white base, but then you get the black look and the blue, and they sort of just interact with each other. Occasionally I've done this and I find a little droplet in there, and then all of a sudden the color completely changes. But I'll add this into the other mix, and it will get cool pretty quickly. The soap bases, once they're in the mold, if it's a small amount of soap that you're using, it will actually cool down pretty quickly. But since I added both of these so close together, it's actually okay. And so I'm going to use my secondary spoon again and add in these little clumps and that are left over from the spoon. You see, the cocoa butter will actually stick more so than the shea butter will, but then again, that's because it's a little bit more firm. And I'm just waiting for the soap to create a film, excuse me, a film over the top so that I can get rid of some of these bubbles. Because the bubbles you don't really want in your soap. It's not really professional looking. And so I try and eliminate it when I can. Earlier when I put the extra kind of firmer pieces inside from the spoon, what will happen with them is they will just harden with the rest of the soap. The soap is still warm enough that it will sort of combine with these little pieces that I'm putting in, and it'll all turn out one solid piece. So you won't have little firmer spots somewhere in your soap. And for now, I'm just going through to make sure that I kill off all these little bubbles. And make sure that they're no longer there. And you see the soap will actually thicken on the top first, which is fine. And in the process of getting rid of the bubbles, sometimes you get an interesting pattern going, or an interesting texture rather, and that will dissipate whenever you use the soap and you rub it against your skin or use it with water. It'll dissipate, so it's not going to affect the soap in any way. I kind of like it because it makes it look like an actual at-home product versus something that is store-bought. You know, you're getting something legit that's imperfect in a specific kind of way. So right now what I'm going to do is clean up my pots. So you hear me banging around a little bit, but I'm going to clean up my pots so that I get all of the cocoa base removed. I'm going to put this off to the side and let that chill. Once it chills down, I will be able to cut it up and put some of my stuff away. I already have my shea butter cut up, so that makes it easy. And I've already got my hot pot of water. I can just turn that up to boiling temperature again. A lot of the water that's in this pot will actually evaporate, so what I like to do is put some of the other pot's water in there. Right, so now I'm cleaning up the reason why I use the hot water from one of the pots, if I can, is because the soap will actually respond better to the hot water than it does the cold water, because you're melting it down in these pots with that boiling water, so it gets to a certain temperature, and that temperature will make it easier to scrub off stuff because it's close to that melting temperature. And the good thing about making soap is that it's actually soap, and it's food friendly. Because it's an organic product, it's actually food friendly. So I've got my pot all cleaned up. I'm going to turn back up my hot water, double boiler. And I'm going to put my shea butter in the pot so that I can make my small soaps. I'm going to take my spoons. I'm going to go ahead and clean them while I wait. Alright, so for this, it's the same kind of thing. I'm waiting for my soap to melt. Here it is. Get my pot of water boiling, and then the shea butter will actually melt. I mean, obviously this is a little bit less, but it'll melt quicker than the cocoa butter base. And I got my mold here. And I use this mold for smaller soaps. You can also use it for larger soaps to get a typical soap bar size. But I also like using the larger mold that I showed you earlier because it's a little different style, and you get larger bars if you wish. When you cut them down, you can choose exactly how big you want them. So there are my 3 vitamin E's for this batch. And while we wait, I'm going to go ahead and just show you how this has changed. Right? So now, instead of being a liquid form, it's actually started to solidify. And that's really easy. I mean, it happens really quickly. And it makes it very easy to handle. And these are a little bit more thick than I usually make them. But I can cut them however I want lengthwise, and I make sure that that they're the same weight. You calculate that whenever I slice them up. And then that way I ensure that I'm giving everybody the equal size of the product that they wish for when you do it by weight. So I get 2-pound bars, I'll cut it in half, I've got scales, and I'll go ahead and weigh it out to make sure that that's good, and then I use either a ruler to cut it down, and I'll calculate, make sure that I'm giving everybody the same size. It's a little bit more complex. I mean, it's a lot easier to use pink. This, you know, you can determine the height and everything, but like I said, it's a little bit more variety, and then also you get a different look, and I like playing around with things like that. For this one, I'm going to be using a blue-green. It's close to the blue, but it's blue-green. And I'm going to use the black as well, because what I'm making is a Moon Lake Musk. And so, I don't know, I always thought about that as just kind of a darker blue-green. So that is in fact what I'm doing. And as you'll see, this is starting to melt down. It's a little bit more viscous, I guess, and sort of almost watery in comparison to the cocoa base. And the reason that is just because it's softer. It's a softer product. It's a softer item, actually, in its natural form. And it's broken down. But as you can see, this is actually the cocoa base that I was using earlier, but it is a Earthwise Aromatics. And it comes in a form that sort of falls apart and kind of reminds me of a natural feta cheese. But that's sort of the texture that you want when you get a cocoa butter base for soaps. This is the same company, and this is their Shea base. And you'll notice just by the texture itself, it does not chip. It's a lot smoother, so it doesn't have that kind of crumbling factor that you'll find in let's say blue cheese or feta cheese. And in fact, when you slice through it, you can feel how much more smooth it is when you cut through it. This is very, very interesting if you're into this kind of thing. And then I also have a goat's milk base. I don't have any right now, but that's even more firm than the cocoa butter soap base, and it will not chip off, it will not crumble. It is a much more firm, and that is by far the one that will last the longest. So if I am making things for my husband, generally I'll use that just because it's easier. He likes me to make these for him, and I've got no problem with it, but I want something that's going to last for him. Right now I also have, this is a different company, it's Our Earth Secrets, but it's a It's a honey soap base. It's actually in glycerin form, right? So it's gonna have, it's a, just glycerin is the component that makes soap actual soap. It looks like this corner got messed up a bit, but this is gonna be a clear, and it's smooth, right? But it also has honey inside of it, and that's a kind of a newer product that I've been working with. I haven't really gotten to know it all that well, but the glycerin is a bit more difficult when it comes to boiling. You can get a lot of little lumps and stuff. It's hard to get it kind of like the shea butter is, where all of this is smooth and it's melted. The glycerin will actually have little spots that are not melted, and so it's a little bit more difficult to use it. But I really wanted to try out the honey base just to see what that was like on the skin. So I have a couple of those. So this one is a large bar, and this is the pink mold, right? I use the pink mold for this. But it's a large bar, and I use the Release essential oil from, that one is from Young Living. Then I also got in a cedarwood essential oil from doTERRA. It's kind of like a man scent, I think, more so. I was looking for different varieties that I could use, but this is also a large bar, and this is what a large bar looks in the different, in the longer mold, right? I also make lotions. The lotions I sell for $10 a piece, and they are all large bars. So they're equivalent to the same weight and size of the large bars of soap that I sell for $8 a piece. And the small bars of soap I sell for $6 a piece. And that's just to cover the cost of the ingredients. It's a little bit more expensive to get certified organic components to use, which is why the pricing is what it is. But as you can see, I'm adding my vitamin E to this. It's melted down quite a bit. There's still a few more clumps in it. But it's nice and melted down. So I'm going to just go ahead and stir this up and help break down the big clumps so that hopefully it can melt faster. And get my second spoon and make sure this stuff gets added into what's in there already. And it gets a chance to melt down. There it is. Okay. So the vitamin E is distributed. I'm going to wait a little bit. Just a few more seconds to make sure that everything is melted down before I add in the color, because I don't want there to be large white clumps within the soap that don't have the coloring. So I'm going to wait for a second before I do that. And then I've got my little dropper here. I'm only going to use about 2 to 3 drops for this, since they're small bars, and I'll probably get about 2, maybe 3 small bars This wasn't really half a pound, full half pound. So when something is uneven and not the full weight, I'll save it and we'll use it here at home. It's an easier way to not have to worry about wasting product. There it is. You still have a small lump, but it's definitely getting down in size, which is good. So I'll prep my... This I'm using 1 drop of blue-green and then 2 drops of black just to see what the coloring looks like. Anytime you order anything, if you want a special order, I can do any kind of color you want. I don't necessarily have to put color in there, so it's similar to the flowers. If you don't want it, then you don't have to have it. You just let me know. I mean, it's basically up to the customer, up to the user. So this is all sort of melted down. What I'm going to do now is add the little bit of fragrance to it. Alright, got a couple of drops in there. I'm going to stir it in. Alright, and you'll get little bubbles. It's not a big deal. The same thing with the large mold, right? You just wait. So small bars are about just over half. And get a little extra and try it out. See what the husband thinks of it, because sometimes it's really difficult to give him a wide variety of options because that's a lot of extra product that gets used for us in particular. And I'm doing the same thing here that I was doing with the large mold. Try and move some of the bubbles to the side. Obviously, you're not going to move all of them till it's a little bit more firm on the top. But since these are a smaller mold, they're actually going to chill even quicker than the large mold. And you'll get these really tiny bubbles, and you can play around with them. If they're on the edge, you can cut them off too when they're actually hard and solid. It sort of saves you from having to work on it so much while it's in the mold. Alright, so all this is extra. It might be a little bit too rough to combine in with this one. Well, it works. That one's for us anyways, so. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and stop. This is what our soap bars look like when they're for the small ones. And I will come back later when they have actually hardened up. I'll go ahead and show you how I cut the large bars of soap and then go through sort of the decorating process. What I do for those is sometimes for special orders, if I know they're gifts, I'll put little bow ties on them and make them nice and pretty before I slip them in the individual bags. But I'm going to cut it off for now, and I will see you all in a bit. Thanks for watching.